Hi there. I want to share some thoughts about Module 4 with you in 21st Century Learning. Um, Great discussion. I think that I love the fact that many people have taken it well past the idea of technology. Technology being the definition of 21st century learning is kind of how it started, but I think people have realized that there's a lot more to 21st century learning other than just coding and technology and the ubiquitous use of different media and stuff like that. Well, all that stuff is extremely important. There's more to it. So one thing that comes to mind is a quote from Alex Lawson, who's a math researcher. And she says, knowing your timetables isn't enough, and it never was. And I love that quote because a lot of people will say things like the new math curriculum, the new whatever. And the idea was that never did anybody say that it was good practice for students to memorize a 10 by 10 times table, right? We always wanted students to think about 7 times 4 as possibly 4 times 5 and 4 times 2, and then putting those together, for example, right? And then eventually we just remember what it is by use and use and use. But the idea is that we need those reasoning tools, and we always did need them. Now they're so much more important just because knowledge is a little bit obsolete. Like, it's all at our fingertips, and so we do need students to be ready with those 21st century skills, like the 6 C's that everybody's talking about and things like that, right? Somebody quoted Sugata Mitra in their response, saying it's not about making learning happen, it's about letting learning happen. And I love that quote. It's one of my favorites. And if that quote resonates with you, I encourage you to go ahead and read Environment as the Third Teacher. It's a monograph from the Ministry of Education. It's really about setting up a space and setting up a culture so that you can just let learning happen. I'll post that in the discussion box. Somebody else cited Vertical Math Whiteboard's group work and Peter Lilladal's work, really. I'll post that name underneath too. And this to me is a great example of 21st century learning, when students are up at the board working in groups, and there's different groups working on different parts of the board. That's really how big ideas grow. And if we let our students work in an environment like that, we can ask much more complicated questions, and we can set the bar way higher than if we're just making students work in isolation on a piece of paper. Finally, in terms of talking of, so I'll post the Environment as the Third Teacher monograph, and I'll write down Peter Lilladal's name so you can read about that if you're curious. It will come up in a later module a little bit. Finally, in talking about problems that promote 21st century thinking, you guys made some really great arguments about what makes a task relevant. My example that I like to give is from this website, which I'll also share. It's wouldyourathерmath.com. And so the question is, would you rather pay for 3 gifts and get 1 free, or would you rather use a 20% off coupon? And the reason why that's a 21st century thinking question for me is because students need to use their own lived experience and come up with a hypothesis, come up with some test sets about, and they have to come up with their own pricing. They might have to search, come up with some test sets about when is 3 plus 1 better and when is 20% off better. And then I want to know what criteria make one more worthwhile than the other one. So I love that question. I always have great success with it in a grade 9 applied classroom. So you can find that on wouldyourathерmath.com. I'll post that as well. Okay. So great work so far. I'm very impressed with the discussions, and I'll talk to you soon. Cheers. Go Raptors.